Ladies and gentlemen, hello, this is Debo over at Land Say Go, and we have another exciting day of spoilers here for you. Day number 10 in the spoiler circuit. So let's go ahead and just break it on down. We have Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi, 3 green for an instant, and it has put 9 +1/+1 counters on target land you control. It becomes a legendary 0/0 elemental creature with haste named Vitu-Ghazi, and it's still a land. This card is very, very powerful. It harkens back to something like Averter's Gearhulk, where you would have 5 mana and then all of a sudden you would have an 8/8 Trampler. This will be 5 mana that gives you a 9/9 with haste, so that's going to be extremely powerful. What's amazing with this card as well is since it has that instant speed ability, we can cast it on our opponent's turn as a surprise blocker. We can cast it in response to them activating something like Search for Escanta or something like that in order to circumvent some of their counter spells or something. So there's a lot of play we can have with Awaken of Vitu-Ghazi. The other thing about it too, you just have to remember, it does make your land legendary. So in order to cast more of these spells, you have to target the same land, which is fine. The next time you target it, it's an 18/18. Seems pretty great. So it really looks like we're having this really cool Lands Matters deck really starting to form even more than before. I kind of like the way this is going. It's going to see a lot of play in something like Modern and Commander as well. Maybe Modern. This may be a little too expensive for Modern, but it's pretty funny you can make a 10/10 Inkmoth Nexus with this card. So I don't know. We'll see. But I think Commander is going to really like this card as well as Standard. I think this is going to be great Standard and limited play. Thundering Zeratok, 4 and a green for a 4/5, has Trample, and when it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control gain Trample until end of turn. This is a fine limited card. It's a 5 mana 4/5 of Trample, and it grants other things Trample. I definitely think this is something you're going to want to pick up. It's a pretty good bomb, and yeah, be good for limited. Domri's Ambush, red and a green for a sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. I like that it has that planeswalker ability on there. Now this is sorcery speed. It's not instant speed. I think this is going to be better in limited. We have just better cards that are split cards in the format already. So I don't think this is going to see a lot more play than those. So really, this is probably just going to be more of a limited card than anything else. I do like that it gives your creatures a +1/+1 counter. So maybe if you're running something like a +1/+1 counter synergy theme, you could run this in that. But other than that, I really just don't see it breaking into Standard. It's going to be more of limited. Speaking of Domri, we also have Domri himself, the Anarch of Bolas, 1 red-green for a rare planeswalker with 3 loyalty. His static ability says creatures you control get +1/+0. Wow, just a semi-anthem tax right on at the beginning. That's pretty good. +1. Add red or green, creature spells you cast this turn can't be countered. Whoa, okay, so this all of a sudden becomes like 5 through 8 of Rhythm of the Wild in your deck. That's pretty amazing that creature spells that you cast after you take him up can't be countered. Doesn't matter if the mana is used to cast that creature spell or not. Just after that point, your creatures can't be countered within your turn. That's a very powerful card. And I like the fact that the red and green can be used for anything, not just creatures. That ability is going to be really good. It comes in with 3 loyalty, so it comes down really early. I like this card a lot. It has -2, says target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So all of a sudden, we also have a removal spell with this guy as well. Man, I think Domri's going to see quite a bit of play. He's probably not going to be the top of people's lists for something to play, but I think he's definitely going to be at least a 2 or 3 of, and maybe even a sideboard piece against control. We have a couple of really cool white cards here. We have Martyr for the Cause, 1 and a white for a 2/2, so he's a bear, but he has an upside. He has whenever he dies, you proliferate. I don't think that this card's going to see a ton of play in Standard by any means. I doubt he's going to see a lot of play even in Limited. He probably will see more play in something like Commander, for sure, because you can recur him a lot easier, but since we don't have something like Rally the Ancestors in this deck, I just don't know how we can really abuse this guy. The only other thing that I can think of is if we play him with a Johnny. So a Johnny has his +1 that allows us to put counters on creatures. He's got his -2 that allows us to return a creature with converted mana cost 2 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. And then he has his like -8 or whatever to get 3 tokens. Well, the thing is with Martyr, because he has that proliferate ability, he just kind of works really well with a Johnny. So all of a sudden, you know, you can be ticking him up, and you're making your creatures grow bigger and bigger. And then once Martyr for the Cause dies, which you probably just leave him back as a blocker, right? Once he dies, you then can proliferate your Johnny plus the creatures you've been ticking up. And then if you want to get him back, he only basically cost 1 loyalty instead of 2 to get back. So I think Martyr of the Cause is probably going to see play in something like that. And then also, of course, Commander. Top of the statue, 2 and a white for an instant. Tap target permanent. If it's an artifact, destroy it. Draw a card. Okay. Interesting. So this card, it's an okay removal spell for artifacts. It's 3 mana. It does cycle, basically, so it draws you a card. And then it has the tap target permanent. So if you're playing in a format that doesn't have a lot of artifacts, well, then it also just becomes just a fog for a creature for a turn. Maybe you tap down an opponent's land at the beginning of their upkeep or something like that. I'm okay with this. And then it draws you a card. I think this card's fine. It's probably going to see more play in Limited. Maybe see play in sideboards of Standard. I do like that it's a little bit flexible. Probably something like Best of One might want something like this because it's so flexible. But yeah, it seems pretty decent. Chain Whip Cyclops, 4 in a red for a 4/4. For 3 in a red, target creature can't block this turn. Again, I think this is going to be a pretty fine card for Limited. He's a mana sink, so late game, you can just make a bunch of your opponent's creatures not being able to block, and you can just swing in with your board. I think he's fine. You might be able to prioritize some other things a little bit more than him, but you know, I think he's worth an include. Raging Crunch, 2 in a red for a 4/3, and he can't attack alone. Seems okay. Crunch Wrangler, 1 in a green for a 2/1 with Trample, and it says whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Crunch Wrangler. Now this guy actually might see some standard play. Now we are seeing these pieces come for a power 4 or greater style of deck. We have like Sarkhan's Ceiling, we have Goreclaw, we have this guy, we've got a bunch of really powerful cards. In fact, even Raging Crunch has 4 power and 3 toughness. He would trigger this guy. I think that this is okay. Probably a decent 2-drop in a deck like that. And is it going to be better than something like an Incubation Druid that could ramp you into some of your bigger creatures? That I don't know. It depends on how you build your deck. But I think this guy could have a place in Standard, and he's a decent limited card as well. Now we're getting into some really interesting things here. We have Nissa's Triumph. For green, we have a sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 basic forest cards. If you control a Nissa Planeswalker, instead search your library for up to 3 land cards, and reveal those cards and put them into your hand and shuffle your library. Okay, really interesting stuff. So if we're going to be playing this in a format like, let's start with Modern. With Modern, if you have a Nissa out, you can basically tutor up Tron. Seems pretty good. And Legacy, you could tutor up your Dark Depths and your Thespian Stage. Seems pretty interesting. In Standard, there's not a whole lot of lands that you can choose from, but I think just being able to get 2 lands for 2 mana seems pretty good. It's a green draw 2, right? And then if you happen to have a Nissa out, it's a green draw 3. It thins your deck out, it gets out your useless lands, you can have them in your hands. We have this sort of land strategy deck that's being built. This could definitely fit within that. I think Nissa's Triumph is pretty good. I also think Commander players are going to love this card, since you can play basically every Nissa ever in a green deck and then play this card with it. I think it's going to be pretty good. I'm excited for this card and to see what it can do in Standard. Speaking of Nissa, we also have Nissa Who Shakes the World. Now, this card was one of those ones that had been spoiled a while ago, but it wasn't officially spoiled, so we just waited until now. So it's 3 green for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. And it has a static ability of whenever you tap a forest for mana, add an additional green. That is very powerful. We're basically doubling our mana. And what's really interesting too is if we tap a dual land that has a forest as one of its dual types, even if we're not tapping it for the green, we still get that additional green. It's really interesting. So like if we tap an Overgrown Tomb for black, we can still add a forest to our mana pool because we're still tapping a forest. And then on top of all this, we have some other abilities. We have a +1, put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to one target non-creature land you control. Untap it, it becomes a 0/0 elemental with vigilance and haste. That's still a land. And then you also have a -8. You get an emblem with lands you control have indestructible. Search your library for any number of forest cards and put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Okay, so let's unpack this. The reason why all of these are together is because one of the biggest problems with this type of a strategy of running Awakening lands is that it turns you off from mana, because you're using your lands as a creature, right? By giving us this ability to be able to tap our lands for additional mana, it kind of offsets the fact that we're going to be using our creatures not for mana, but instead we're using our lands to attack. So by having this ability where we can put 3 +1/+1 counters on lands over and over and over again, plus they also have vigilance, which seems really good. So we can swing before main phase 2, deal our damage, and then come back and use our lands after we swing in. Seems really great. And then it's -8. It just gives us gas. All of our lands all of a sudden become indestructible. And so now we just get an indestructible 3/3 every turn. Seems amazing. And if we're running something like Multani or Crucible of Worlds or Scapeshift, things like that, we can build this really interesting Lands Matters decks. And I definitely think that Nissa, Who Shakes the World, could be a very interesting and powerful piece in that deck. Speaking of lands, we also have Living Twister, red, and a green for a 2/5 elemental. And it has 1 in a red, discard a land card. It deals 2 damage to any target. And then we can pay a green to return a tapped land you control to its owner's hand. Okay, so this is going to be one of those control breakers. You're going to play this card early for 3 mana. You're going to be able to get in some swing and some damage. And then late game, when your control opponent is set up with counter spells, you're just going to start pitching your lands, picking up your lands, pitching your lands, and dealing damage uncounterably or almost uncounterably to them. I think this card is going to see a lot of play. It's going to survive a lot of abuse. It's a 2/5, very early coming down. I think this card is going to be really good. And then also, again, pair it with something like Wayward Sawtooth and Crucible of Worlds. You get those lands back and keep going. I think that this is going to be kind of a really interesting combo deck that you could build, or just a good sideboard piece for something like the Lands Matters decks. And I saved my personal favorite for last. We have Ilharg the Raise Boar, 3 red for a BOAR God. And it's a 6/6 with Trample. And it has a really powerful ability. Whenever he attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. And then when he dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its owner's library 3rd from the top. So not only does it give you the ability for you to decide if it goes to the top or not, but it circumvents pretty much every single piece of removal that your opponents are going to have, aside from counter spells, mills, or hand disruption. Now, if we play this alongside something like the new Domri or Rhythm of the Wild, we'll be able to get this guy down uncounterably. And then, especially with Rhythm of the Wild, we can also give him haste and swing in the same turn. We swing him in, maybe we put down a Daragaz or a Vivictus or something like that, and we can just start doing huge amounts of damage. Now, it's important to note, because I've seen a lot of people kind of messing this up, the creature that you put down after the Raised Boar has declared attacks, and the creature you put down that's tapped and attacking, if it has an attack trigger, it will not trigger since it's tapped and attacking. It was not declared as an attacker, so its triggers will not trigger. But you can still get a giant beater coming down. In fact, play this with something like Palaka Worm. All of a sudden you're gaining 7 life, swinging in with another 7/7 Trampler. That seems really gross. And if they happen to kill it, you draw a card. If not, it goes back to your hand to do it again. I think this guy's going to have a lot of fun. He's really pushed. He's going to make a really interesting commander deck too. I definitely think that this guy is going to see play in Standard. I know I'm building around him, and hopefully you will too. Again, this is Debo over at Land Say Go. We appreciate you guys checking out our spoiler videos. Remember, you can like, comment, share, subscribe. Get the word out that we're starting to make some video content. We'd really appreciate it. Feel free to join us on Twitter at LandSayGo1. You can also join us at Facebook at just Land Say Go. We also have a Facebook group called The Sideboard. You can join us there as well. Again, Debo at LandSayGo.com, and I'll talk to you soon.